Plato said, "Courage is knowing what not to fear." Welcome to McBain Moments. Alright guys, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the Manor. Make sure you take a moment and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. Courage is knowing what not to fear. Fear has, throughout our existence as humans, driven a lot of what we do. We fear the unknown, we fear the different, we fear things we don't understand. And that fear has driven us to come up with certain attitudes, and those attitudes are what drive us to do different things. If we allow things that we shouldn't fear to drive our actions, then those actions will not necessarily reflect what we are trying to accomplish. And so, I mean, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit when it comes to fear and courage, but in this case, I'm going to avoid the low-hanging fruit and go toward fear of failure. This is the one no one wants to talk about. People fear failure because they feel like it's a reflection on their abilities. Well, to a certain extent, you're right. When you fail, it means you weren't capable of accomplishing the goal for one reason or another. Now, why was it you weren't able to accomplish that goal? Was it because you didn't put enough effort into it? Was it because you lack a certain skill? You have to be able to, as objectively as possible, which is very difficult because your life is a subjective experience, determine what caused you to fail. Because if you can figure that out, you can overcome that particular issue and then succeed the next time. And I've hammered on that particular nail so hard it's pretty much been driven through the dead horse. But there's another fear, there's another thing that people fear that they don't really think about. And more people fear this than they fear failure. Because if you fail, in most cases, nothing changes. Yeah, you might have taken a risk, you might have lost a little money, you might have lost a little prestige, but you really didn't change your status. People fear success far more than they fear failure. And they fear success because once you start to succeed, you are expected to keep succeeding. And the irony is, once you start to succeed, you will keep succeeding. That's the nature of success. Success breeds success. And so, but people fear that progress because it's going to drive them out of their comfort zone. Every time you succeed, you are forced into an area where you are uncomfortable. And where you're uncomfortable is where your fears kick in. Now, in my job, I have to do things that make me uncomfortable. I work in sales. I have to make cold calls. I detest cold calling. I have been uncomfortable with cold calling for a very long time. I have been forced to become comfortable with it because that is my job. If I'm going to be successful at my job, I need to be able to do these things that make me uncomfortable. I have to talk to people about subjects they don't want to talk about. I had to become comfortable with it. When I worked in finance, I was in estate banking. That's all talking about death. And people don't like talking about death. But I had to become comfortable talking to people about things that made me uncomfortable, because I don't want to think about death, and things that made them uncomfortable, talking about their eventual death. Because there's two things in this world that are constant, death and taxes. Taxes are fairly easy to talk about. Death is not. Overcoming that fear of discomfort, that fear of success, knowing that by being successful in one place, I would have to become successful in others, that changed my mindset. And it was a slow process. And it does curtail into other parts of your life. Because once you are on the road, once the successes start to roll, you expect yourself to succeed in everything you do. And that's a scary thing. And when you fail, it hits so much harder. Or when you hit roadblocks, it hits so much harder because you're like, I am successful doing A, why am I not successful doing B? The fact of the matter is, you will be. You just have to put the effort in. Whatever you put effort into is what you will be successful in. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's your job, your hobby, your family, your children, your relationship. Whatever you put effort into is what you will be successful in. And a lot of people have to juggle a lot of irons in that fire. And you do too, if you're going to have a balanced life. But realistically speaking, life is never balanced. There's no such thing as balance. Understanding how to take care of the things that are unbalanced in a way that makes it so that they're still working correctly is what's important. And you can call that balance if you want, but it's not going to be equal. You're going to put more effort into one or two things than you do into anything else. And that's just the way life works. Have the courage to understand that and figure out what those things that you need to put the effort into for your success, and work on keeping the other ones going to the extent that they need to be taken care of. Because you can't work your job so much that you neglect your kids. You can't work on the hobby so much that you neglect your spouse. That's not keeping things going correctly. That's not being successful. What is successful is you're climbing in your job. You need to be able to make those promotions so that you have the money to have the things that you want with your family. You're maintaining your relationship. You're making sure the kids are taken care of, but your focus is on your job. For most people in their 20s, that's the way they should be thinking. If you're in your 30s, you should be about there too. Usually in the earlier 30s, as you move into later 30s, you'll have started to find you won't have to put so much energy into the job because you'll be good at it enough to where it's basically turning its own wheels. And then you can refocus. And that's why a lot of people in their 30s and 40s will find that their home life becomes a lot more, for lack of a better term, balanced, because their job is self-perpetuating now. They have enough success. They know what they're doing well enough to where they don't have to put so much time into it. And they can segue into working on their home life more. And that's why you see your 30-year-old parents and the kids are starting to move into the older ages, the 12s, the 13s, the early high school. And they're doing more things like camping, they're doing more things like travel, because one, they have the money to do it, and two, because they have the ability to refocus, because the things they used to have to focus on have become automated in their brain at work. And that's what you have to do. And have the courage to do it. Have the courage to say, okay, I need to do things this way so that later I can have the things I want. If you don't fear the things you don't know, and for most of us, success is something we don't know. If you don't fear the things you don't know, you will get so much further than you are now. Arthur Koestler sums it up thusly. Courage is never to let your actions be influenced. Sorry, I can't read the notebook from here. Courage is to never let your actions be influenced by your fears. Become comfortable being uncomfortable. Chase that success even though it makes you uncomfortable. Even though you fear it. Chase the success. And you will become more than you are. This has been a McBain moment.